right. Once again, I need to ask you as we get started here, we are recording the call for those who weren't able to be with us today. We are also reminding you that we need you to mute. I think I have everybody muted, and it doesn't sound like there's anybody that's unmuted, but also we need you to turn off.
Robert Schweitzer and Jenny Lynn Hatter, Harrison County Schools.
Is now joining.
Also need to turn off your video. That's a bandwidth problem. If this many people on the call, it could get a little messy in terms of streaming if we have everybody with their video on. Some housekeeping things in your bar at the middle. If you've not used team meetings before, there's a bar in the center. If you kind of move your cursor, you'll see it. There is a little call out box there where the chat is. If you have questions, we'll try to answer those as we see them pop up in the chat.
Two participants are now joining.
Hopefully we will be providing you answers to some of your largest questions, the most important of which have to do with participation and attendance and documentation. And then a few other things that you need to be aware of today. And then just for your information, for the points of contact that are on the call, I do know that many of you were having a hard time getting access. We wanted to make sure we could get everybody on the call. It looks like we are going to meet our minimum, we're not going to hit our maximum, but we're also going to have weekly meetings like this for just the points of contact. So I just want you to know that we're not, we're trying to be cognizant of everybody's need to get information.
Is now joining.
So hopefully that will take care of itself. So if you'll bear with us while we present this PowerPoint and some other information, and then following the call, we will be sending out emails to all the points of contact with links and additional information that you might need moving forward. Okay. With that in mind, I'm going to try to share my screen with you all right now.
Misty
is now exiting.
Kristen Waller
is now joining.
Laura Perry
is now exiting.
I am hoping that you're seeing a PowerPoint. If you're not, I'm going to text one of my people to make sure that's what you're seeing, because I can't see them.
No,
can't see them.
Not.
Not? Okay.
Now we are.
Jonica Ray and Danny Osborne.
There for a second.
Is now joining.
Now, what
is now joining.
Tim Melton
is now exiting.
Keith Hale
is now exiting.
Vicki Jones
is now exiting. Unknown participant is now joining.
David, we can see your PowerPoint now.
Okay, thanks, Whitney.
Jessica Wilcoxon
is now joining.
Wendy, I did it again.
Yeah. Okay.
Whitney's on the call today too. I know. I need to have you. Yeah. Let me see. I'm going to have to probably pop it off again because several people are joining, and I hope they're not waiting in the lobby. Hold on just a second.
Keep hitting them.
Huh?
David, we see your
Taverna
screen,
ended-
but it's
Is
just
now
your Teams
exiting.
screen.
You don't see the PowerPoint?
I keep seeing the admit, and I just admit them. I don't know if I'm allowed to do that, but it's letting me.
Yeah, somebody do that. That's great, because with the way my setup is, I can't see when I put up my screen, I can't see the actual meeting screen anymore.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll
we-
send it.
We
Can-
can see the PowerPoint, you just need to display it in full
Yeah.
view.
Right, but that's the screen you're seeing, Wendy.
Yes, yes. Uh-huh.
Some of us are not. We see your Teams screen.
All right.
Multiple people are now exiting.
If everyone will remember to
Casey
mute,
Henderson.
that would help.
David, can you
Is
mute
now joining.
people join we don't hear and it's not a problem? Just a suggestion, if that's
No,
possible.
Yeah, it is. I just have to keep doing it.
Okay. I didn't know if there was a way.
And also, everybody turn off your video. That's a streaming problem, because the more people on video, the harder it is to. All right. Let me see. I'll wait a second and. Are we now seeing my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Give me a few more
Charlotte
yeses.
6 for Mark Cox.
A few more people.
Yes.
Is now
real quick.
exiting.
Okay, great.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you. That's good. I think we're in good shape now. Okay. So as I said, we're going to go through this PowerPoint first, and then we'll go back and kind of watch the chat box, see if your questions are answered through the PowerPoint. And then after that, we'll see what other questions you might have, and we might take forward that we didn't anticipate. So here are the things that we're going to hit first on the PowerPoint today. We're going to talk about collecting participation rates. We're going to talk about collecting evidence of student learning. We're going to talk about the commissioner's approval for additional days and how that will work. And we are going to talk about, again, we talked about this last week, but what are your decisions and what are KDE's decisions? So. Student participation. For those of you, I should have said this on the outset too, but I need, and you can just whisper this to yourselves, of course, because I can't hear you all say it, but if you will simply repeat after me, today's conversation is about emergency COVID-19 NTI days. If you are an existing NTI district, your original 10-day
Is now joining.
Your original 10 days should follow the same procedures that you followed to date. If you were still turning in documentation for those original 10 days, still do it the way you always did it. But for emergency COVID-19 NTI days, there's a different, but again, if you are a existing district, please follow those original guidelines for those first 10 NTI days. But for emergency COVID-19 NTI days, listen to what I'm saying now because it's very different. Number one is student participation. Student participation is going to be something that teachers collect weekly, not daily, but weekly. We're going to ask that every teacher internally
Casey Henderson.
Have an
Is now
interaction.
exiting.
Have an interaction with every student in their classes at least once a week. That interaction can be by phone, by digital, by email, however it would work best. And they're going to report up to the principal that one interaction per week with their student, because on that interaction, we hope that they can gain a level of understanding and assurance that at least the student is progressing on assignments that they're being asked to do. Remember, as I say, everything I'm saying, this is what is about your reporting to KDE. Internally, we certainly believe that you need to be collecting information on whatever basis and frequency you think is important. But this is about what you're submitting to KDE. The principals will then collect that school level information weekly and submit it to the superintendent or to whoever in the district office is collecting that information. And the district will submit to KDE on a weekly basis participation rates. Now, having said that, from a submission standpoint with SharePoint, and all of you all now have a SharePoint folder for emergency NTI, and you have access for the folks that you gave us as your points of contact. That program itself hasn't changed. The SharePoint process internally in terms of the actual platform. So you'll still see a day-to-day, put your participation rate for students in day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. But you can just duplicate that number. For instance, for week 1, you can put in the same number for days 1 through 5. For week 2, you can put in the same number for days 6 through 10. For week 3, so forth. So we're only asking you to collect and submit a weekly participation rate during the emergency only. On the next 2 pages, I'm just showing you some forms that we kind of just threw together real quick that are examples. Please remember and hear that. These are examples. These are not forms you're going to submit to anybody at KDE. These are just for your internal use for both teachers and the district to collect participation rates on students. This is still students. This first form is just an idea of how a teacher could list their students on the left, and then week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, some examples of how they might have interacted with those students. They talked to them on the phone, they had a digital interaction with them, so forth. If there are other methods, you could add those too, but this is just an example of a participation log that the teacher would fill out. This is an internal document. We are not, and we know many of you already have documents like this. But remember that we are at this point talking about weekly collections of information for each student inside a teacher's classrooms. The second one, this one is what the principal or the local district would use to collect all the schools. I'm sure you already have one of those, but again, we're shrinking the thing down to a weekly average. You only have to submit it on a weekly basis. Teacher participation really doesn't change much from the way it was done on the original NTI for folks who were already existing districts. We are collecting it still daily.
Is now joining.
Because it involves a contractual obligation. And we assume that most of our districts have already created their own internal logs or are developing such a log so that you all can see the workload of the teacher each day.
Is now joining.
In the system. Also, that student participation log on the previous slide may also be used as you're determining the teacher's participation over the course of the emergency situation. Okay, here's where it gets very, very streamlined, and I need everybody to pay real close attention.
Unknown participant is now exiting.
Because this is where it gets very different from regular traditional NTI documentation. We are not during the emergency, we are not at KDE collecting student work or lesson plans.
Is now exiting.
Repeat that. During the emergency, we are not collecting student work or lesson plans during the emergency. The way this is going to work, because we know it's you guys have way too much on your plates right now to worry about all of that kind of collection of information and how you're going to collect it. is you'll see in the next minute or so how we're going to actually get assurance from you that you are collecting it. And then what will more than likely happen sometime in the future, after the emergency's all over, is we'll do some both desk and actual physical auditing, so we can check to see that the documentation and the work of students and the lesson plans are available for us to see in the district offices.
Is now exiting.
So what's gonna happen, and Wendy has already done this, is she's placing in each of your folders on SharePoint an Excel spreadsheet that's 2 pages in length. The first page, and I really hesitate to do this, but I wanted to show it to you. Will somebody tell me if they're possibly seeing the Excel spreadsheet now?
Unknown participant is now exiting.
Not yet.
Not yet,
Not yet.
David.
Okay. You're still seeing the PowerPoint.
The PowerPoint's still up.
David, do you want to try to let me request control and maybe I can show it?
Hold on just a second. Yeah, let's maybe do that. Wendy, let me give you.
Let me try right now. Hold on.
There we go.
Okay. Now let me see if it'll let me share my desktop. Okay, let me know if you all can see the Excel spreadsheet now.
I'm still seeing your picture. So there it is. Okay, I got it. So maybe hopefully others are.
I have it.
Okay.
I'll have
Great.
to kind of.
Yeah.
You want me just to kind of walk through it real quick?
Sure.
Or,
sure.
Okay.
That'd be great. Thanks, Wendy.
Okay, so this spreadsheet will be loaded into your district folder on SharePoint in the 2019-20
Is now joining.
documentation folder. So instead of going in there and seeing day folders, if you're an emergency district, all you will see is this Excel spreadsheet. If you're a traditional district, you'll see your day 1 through day 10 folders in addition to this Excel spreadsheet. And so for your additional days, you would document here.
Is
So
now exiting.
The first worksheet is called a district assurance sheet, and so this we anticipate districts will complete
exiting.
at the end of the school year, at the end of the days used for the coronavirus. So basically, it just gives a little bit of instruction. The district name is a drop list. You select your district, and then you answer Assurance 1, whether that's yes or no. They are check boxes. Assurance 1 is all schools have verified contact with students weekly throughout the NTI duration. If the answer is no, then we just need a brief explanation there. And then Assurance 2, 3, and 4 are all yes or no.
Unknown participant is now exiting.
And then if no, to please explain. Assurance 2 is instruction. All content areas were provided to students throughout the NTI duration. 3 is all grade levels were provided instruction during the NTI. And then 4 is all student groups were provided instruction throughout the NTI. So, hopefully the answer to all those will be yes at the end of this. But then your superintendent at the very end will just do a quick signature, electronic signature in that box, and enter the date in which they verified it. So that all is, again, at the end of the NTI duration. The second worksheet is your evidence documentation. So this is going to kind of take the place of all of you having to upload, lesson plans and student evidence and et cetera into SharePoint. You'll basically just be documenting what you looked at that first day. And so the instructions say to enter a level, grade, and subject area in which evidence has been reviewed for each day of the non-traditional instruction. At the end of the allotted NTI days, each level
Frank
is now exiting.
at the end of the allotted NTI days, each level and subject area should be represented. So throughout the 20 days, at some point, each level, elementary, middle, or high school, and each content area or subject area should be represented. You don't have to put in a level and grade and subject area for every day, but just documented throughout the 20 days. So if you click in level, that's just
Fayette County Schools.
Is now joining.
if you click in level, that's just a drop list of elementary, middle, and high. And depending upon which level you select, it will auto-populate the grades to select. And then the subject area are all the same, no matter what the grades. It's just the big four: English, math, social studies, or science. So that would be what you would complete, say, for day one, just as an example of something you, as the superintendent or as the NTI contacted in the district, verified for day one. And then you would just continue to do that for each of the days. Okay, and so when you, let me give another example here. When you do this, as you do it, you can do this all at once at the end, or you can do it each day. But this is going to be, again, on your SharePoint site. So literally work on it from SharePoint and then hit save, and that'll just save it right back into your district folder in SharePoint. If something happens and you download the document from SharePoint and you save it on your desktop, you'll just need to upload it back into the SharePoint folder, because that's where we'll be going to check to make sure that we're getting everything we need from you guys during this time. David, did I miss anything?
No, I think I'll probably add a couple of things, but I'm going to take back control
Kate
here.
McAnally, Fayette County Public Schools.
Hold on just a second.
Is now joining.
Okay.
Now let me know when we're back up on the, oh, I didn't mean to do.
There we go. I had to stop presenting. I think you should be able to pull your PowerPoint back up now.
Is that what or tell me when you're seeing it.
We're not. You're probably going to have to go and do your share screen again.
Okay.
It's up.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so I went back one slide too many. So I'm glad that Wendy was able to share that with you. So as she explained, that file is that Excel spreadsheet is going to be in your SharePoint folder. Page 1 is something that you should wait and complete at the conclusion of the emergency. Page 2 is one that you can complete daily if you want to, weekly if you want to, at the end of the time if you want to, and please understand, this is very important. That is it. That is the extent of the information that KDE is going to be collecting from you at this point. We're going to trust that you all are collecting that information on whatever frequency that you feel is important, so your teachers and your students are interacting and you know that learning is taking place. But at this moment, because of the situation that's unusual and completely about the COVID situation, we understand that collecting student work is going to be difficult, and submitting it would be difficult too in some situations, and the volume would be really tough for all of us. So all we're asking on the front end or during the emergency is what we've just asked you to do. And then, as we stated, we will probably come back on the back end, probably I would assume summer or even maybe later than that in some situations, and do some auditing so we can actually collect a little bit more information than this. But this allows us to say that we have got assurances from all of you all that you are doing the things you're supposed to be doing to meet the regulation requirement of continuation of learning on NTI days. I don't know if the superintendent received this yet. It should be coming soon because there's been a lot of questions about getting approval for additional NTI days, you will not be required to do anything for that. The commissioner is going to send to you his approval in a blanket statement that gives all the districts in the state the additional days they need to complete this process. And you should be seeing that soon. So nobody needs to send either to me or to the commissioner a request for additional NTI days. You will all be receiving enough to get you to the point that Kevin discussed yesterday related to the May 1st date, and possibly longer if that is necessary, but it will be a blanket kind of approval. I'm going to finish up my PowerPoint with a couple of these things I mentioned on our call last week, but the reminder, because we get a lot of questions about can we do something during NTI, and the response usually is, and I know it probably frustrates some people, is the regulation doesn't address that, or the regulation doesn't speak to that, or the law doesn't speak to that. So I just want you to be mindful of the fact that most of the situations that you're running into that may be questions for us could be situations where you, the district, have that authority. You decide what you're collecting for evidence from kids about their work. The content of the lessons, which is a question that came up with Commissioner Brown yesterday, the content of the lessons is up to the district. We have in the past said that because NTI has always been a one day here, a couple of days there, that it's probably better for the work to be review only, but that's not in the regulation in terms of you have to do it one way or the other. So we're pretty sure many of you are going to need to do some thinking about new things to share with kids during the course of the NTI experience. So there's an example of that. I think the thing I would say to all of you all, flexibility, flexibility, flexibility. The calls that I'm receiving from parents have to do with obviously the level of work. And I can tell you from our experience, from my staff's experience and mine for the 9 years that we've been doing NTI, is the first time a district becomes an NTI district, the hardest thing and there's no exception to this. This is across the board, and anybody that's on the call that's been an NTI district already knows this is true. The hardest thing for folks to do that first year is recognize the level of work that you're giving the students and making sure that it's something that actually can be done given the additional constraints that both students and parents and families are under. The law says, the regulation says continuation of learning. It doesn't say
Manistee County Schools.
It doesn't say continuation of all learning.
Is now exiting.
And it doesn't. So I just need everybody to be really mindful and thoughtful about all those things that involve that. So how much are you asking students to do on NTI days? And how much of the curriculum, how much of the standards are you actually asking them to really dive into? Because you may have, some folks may have to scale that back a little bit. That's been our experience. Over 9 years, our experience has always been that people start with too much. We get calls from parents, and then we help them realize that it's going to have to be chunked down a little bit. And keep in mind, this is an excellent opportunity for your teachers to focus on things that are still in the standards, but may not be necessarily focused on skills that you know your kids are going to need, but may not be part of the actual assessment, which we're probably not going to be taking. So we need to be thinking about those kinds of things. As you can see by the streamlined way we're going to do documentation and participation, we at KDE recognize that flexibility is necessary at our level too, and we're going to try our best to be mindful of that. Just remember about flexibility, flexibility, flexibility. And ask yourself these guiding questions, things that we've thought about too. What are we trying to accomplish with our NTI instruction? What skills do your kids need to make sure that, as Kevin said yesterday, Commissioner Brown said yesterday, we also got to be mindful of the fact that we're sort of helping our students get enough instruction and enough learning so that they can be prepared for what may be the most difficult year, which is next year when we come back from all of this. So just keep those things in mind as you move forward. Again, I've already alluded to these things. The other thing that has come up, particularly for districts who are already existing NTI districts and those who are new, unless you feel like you're totally changing the entirety of what you're doing, let's not worry about those quick things like you realize that this document didn't work, or you realize that this platform didn't work. If you're still doing the same ideas that you put into your application, let's not worry so much right now about the amendments or requests for changing your application. Let's focus in on what you're doing to provide the instruction and continuation of learning that your kids need. Part of our team at KDE is working right now on a COVID-19 kind of a landing page so that you don't have to search all over KDE's website for COVID-19 information. It'll be a one-stop shop. It'll include resources by content area, by instruction, by special needs students, all those things. And it will have the frequently asked questions that have already been coming up for many of you all. So I just wanted to be on the eye for that. I'm not sure when they expect to have it up, but we hope that is soon. All right, so now we're back in the
Unknown participant is now joining.
We'll go back up here and start from the top if I can find it. Make sure I don't miss anything that might have been a question. Was that Jody?
Yes.
What did you say, Jody?
I've been keeping track of the questions if you want me to read them back to you.
That would be great.
Okay, so the first one is, and these may have already been answered, but
Okay.
it would be good for everybody to hear. We had not used any of our 10 NTI days before the emergency, but are an original district. Do we treat all NTI days the same, or do you have to do daily participation for the first 10?
In this situation, I've had this conversation with the commissioner. In this situation, no. In other words, basically, we know that all of your NTI days back to March the 10th are COVID-19 days. So if you used a day before that and you're obviously a current district, yes. If it was prior to the start of this emergency, you still need to complete daily participation on those days. Basically, on the March the 10th, all of your NTI days, those that you already had from your being a district already, plus the ones we're giving you now as emergency districts and all districts, get clumped together. So if you were an existing district and you didn't use any days, you actually had 10 extra days, which you probably won't use, but they're all now emergency days, if that makes sense to you, if that answers that question. So under this situation, any day since March 10th follows the procedures we talked about today.
Unknown participant is now joining.
Okay, I think that takes care of the next question. Let me see. Traditional NTI districts use
Is now joining.
normal or regular data entries for 1 to 10, even if days 4 through 10 were COVID-19. Is this correct?
If your
Multiple
days
people are now exiting.
if your days 4 through 10 occurred, here's the, yeah, this may have, I may have answered it. Any day that occurs from March the 10th forward is a COVID day under NTI. I hope that answers the question.
Do you have any further guidance from health experts on advice on collecting paper from students? Because it can be live and passed from student to teacher.
Right. The first thing I would say is, based on what we've just told you, is I would throttle back a little bit on the collection of that information, since we're not going to be asking you for it on a particular date. And maybe that will help with some of that. We can ask some health experts. We haven't done that, but I would just remind you that because of the fact that we're not actually asking for that work right now, that you may want to rethink about how you're, the frequency and the timing of when you collect it. It might be that we collect it after, maybe if we get to come back on April 20th, maybe then. So, and maybe we can, by that time, we'll have some answers about what you might need to do, if you need to, how to disinfect it or anything like that.
What about doing professional development during NTI days?
I think the way I would answer that at this moment is I would look at my current calendar and see where a PD day might have landed in there anyway. Obviously, teachers can do virtual PLCs all the time. If you had something scheduled that was like a full district kind of professional learning experience, let me check on that. We can get back to you with a firm answer on that. But I think that might have to do with the calendar.
Okay.
So.
Teachers are worried about assessments and grades for students. Any suggestions or guidance?
I think there are folks, and yesterday we had both the superintendent's call and then the first meeting of our task force that was formed around COVID-19, which includes district folks, our partner organizations, all the K groups, and there is a subset of that group that is working on grading, graduation requirements, and assessments. As you all are probably aware, we are applying to
Tom Arnzen.
the
Is now exiting.
The U.S. Department of Ed to get a waiver on the state assessment for this school year. So the likelihood is there will not be a state assessment, even if we were to come back in May.
There's been some questions about 30 days to submit teacher and student participation rates in SharePoint.
Should have been answered through the PowerPoint.
Okay. Those are the questions that I have so far.
Okay. If anybody has a question, I'm going to try to scroll down here to the base of this thing. Greg was referring to local. Okay, so thank you. There's several things that I've just seen pop up here. We see, being on this call, sometimes that limits you from what you see on other sites. So we have announced that we were approved for our waiver on accountability. And Greg was referring to local assessments, not state. Again, I think that group is going to have, by the end of the week, some guidance on how those things are going to work related to grading and so forth. Tiffany asks, do teachers need to make contact with students each day or once a week? That was the purpose of sort of shifting this out to weekly. If a teacher can, that would be great, obviously, for the students and the teacher. I know that's not possible in many situations. I think at the elementary, I've said this on several occasions last couple of weeks. I think at the elementary level, it would be wonderful for a teacher to be having, even if it's a 30-second phone call with the kids, because a lot of them aren't using digital devices. Obviously, I've seen a lot of great things going on at the middle and high school levels where people have more of a one-to-one kind of situation, where teachers are having group situations, chats with their kids, meetings, so forth like that, Zoom, all kinds of different ways of interacting with their kids. So the idea on interacting with the kids at least once a week is almost to get a sort of informal assessing of where they are in terms of completing assignments and what help they might need. So. Sure.
Just so you don't miss it, there's, I think there's still some confusion. C.D. Morton just posted in the chat, and it kind of got scrolled up with other messages coming in, so I might want to make sure you've seen that.
Let me find this if I can find it.
It basically says, I believe 2 messages have been communicated on how to treat NTI COVID days.
Okay.
And they are not unified, just to be clear. Any day from March 10th, and I'll let you take over, but did you find it?
I still haven't found that exact question.
It says any day from March 10th moving forward should be considered a COVID NTI day, regardless if you had unused traditional NTI days left to use, question mark. The answer is yes to that, correct?
The answer is yes to that question. Everybody on the call, whether you're new or emergency, think of March the 10th, which was the day the commissioner, the waiver that you were approved by the state board for was retroactive to March the 10th. So all of you became NTI districts upon the completion of your application and signatures by your board and superintendent on March the 10th. At that moment, if you had days in the bank that you hadn't used because you were an existing district, those days are now, because that's why you're closed. You're not closed for any other reason. You're closed for that reason. So you will see in SharePoint that we've added that as a kind of a purpose for your day. Under they're listed as COVID-19 days. So there shouldn't be any. The point is there shouldn't be any other NTI days other than COVID-19 since March 10th. Thanks, Wendy and Jody, and keep helping me if I'm missing any others that seem to be.
It looks like. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jody.
Hi, I just got an email with a question. If an audit takes place this summer or next fall, would the materials in question be only those we documented in our new spreadsheet, or would it be more comprehensive?
It will be based on what you submitted in the spreadsheet. Yes. So in other words, we might either call or, I think we might even randomly go visit some places just to see some work. But we would be holding on to your spreadsheet that you submitted and saying, I'd like to see this day 1 elementary grade 5 social studies or whatever it is.
Another question, it looks like 2 people have asked the same question, but it says, last week was the first week of emergency NTI. Teachers may have not contacted or documented their contact with every student because we didn't have this guidance until now. How will we complete the log for the first week?
I think because we haven't given you this guidance until today, I'm going to trust you all, and by assigning the assurances at the end of the line, the district level assurances, the superintendent is trusting that you did your best last week. And if you have another way of determining that kids were, quote, participating, and you've either collected some work already or whatever you might need to do that, use that as your guide. So if you can't figure it out for last week based on what we've asked you to do, we understand that you need, you may need to think about it differently, but you were obviously probably looking at the NTI guidance already and were thinking about how you were going to produce participation rates. So, but again, follow it as best you can now.
So another question is, when will the spreadsheets and new documentation be uploaded to SharePoint? So that's a question for me.
Yep.
I'm working on that now. When you get into this, by the end of the day, I should have all that done. Some districts already have the spreadsheet. I think I'm A through C, so in the district names. So by the end of the day, everyone should have that spreadsheet in their District 1920 documentation folder. And I've gotten several questions about user access.
Can I stop you right there,
Sure.
Wendy, on that one? So we were given from each superintendent points of contact to give SharePoint access to. Some of you all on this call weren't those people.
Okay.
So we will verify with the superintendent, but if we have a list of all the points of contact who we've given access to initially, and Wendy has already given access to all those people. If you are one of those people and you know that you're one of those people and you can't get access still, let us know and Wendy can check on that. But if your name was given by your superintendent, you should have access. But as she just pointed out, she doesn't have all the information in there for all the districts.
Yeah, so yeah, I was going to follow up with that and just say that if there was somebody that needed access that doesn't have it, they should check with us to make sure there's not something on our end, but mainly, like David said, that list came from your superintendents. So we would just need to get verification from them to give you access. I think it's the way David wants to handle that.
We just had a question from Chad and Erlanger. The lesson, Wendy, you might want to answer this. The question was, where in SharePoint is the Excel spreadsheet?
Okay, so the Excel spreadsheet will be when you go to the home SharePoint link that I sent in the window.
Tom Gambrell, Bell County Schools.
And that you got in the email. When you click on that link and you go to your district, so say you're at Ballard County, and you click on Ballard County folder, then you're going to see a 2019-20 documentation folder. You click on that to open that folder. The Excel spreadsheet will be in there. So it's basically district, year, and then the Excel spreadsheet. And I'll try to maybe get some instruction together for David to put within his NTI guidance document so we can get that out to you. But it's a pretty simple path. Just your district, the year, and then the Excel spreadsheet will be in there. And like I said, all districts will have it by the end of the day.
All right. We're just seeing a couple of people that are on the list that we'll just verify, make sure. Jenny from Boone County asked that question too, and she's on the list. So
yeah, Jenny, I gave you and Jim both access to the site over the weekend. I remember that specifically. So if you click on that direct link that I put in the window, you should be able to get to it. And you should have received an email. It kind of looked like it came from me, but it was an automatic email from the SharePoint site. And I know that when I talked to a few people, that may have went into your junk folder, so you can also check there as well.
All right. If you all have additional questions for us, obviously just email one of the myself or Steve Kissinger or Jody Dempsey if you have additional questions. And then Wendy can also be, if you probably have a SharePoint question, you probably want to start with Wendy. So if you're having access issues. All right.
And can I just add, I see several people have put in here, I need access. Once they close this meeting, I'm probably going to lose this chat. So if you could please email me, that would be best. I hate to tell you I'm giving you access and then I've lost your name. So please send me an email. And Sally,
John Howard.
Sally,
Is now
you can call me
exiting.
anytime.
All right. I think we're going to shut it down at that point. Again, if you have
Multiple
questions,
people
please
are
let
now
us know.
exiting.
We will talk to you again. I will be setting
Multiple
up a
people are
weekly
now
call
exiting.
for the NTI points of contact so we can go over stuff
Brian Vanover.
that may
Is
need to
now
be talked
exiting.
about.
Multiple people are
After
now
this call.
exiting.
Thank you all very
Multiple
much.
people are now exiting. Multiple 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 people are now exiting. Is now exiting.
Thanks, Al. Sandra Combs.
Is now exiting.
Melanie Barrett, Christian County Public Schools.
Is now exiting.
Kirby Smith.
Is now exiting. Unknown participant is now exiting.
Sharonda Morton, Fayette County Schools.
Is now exiting.